Okay, so let's start. It's my pleasure to introduce our seminar speaker today, Enrique Lopez Rodriguez. Enrique is a local from here, from La Laguna, indeed, and he did the degree at this university, but then he did the PhD in the United States, in the University of Florida, working with Chris Packham on AGN and polarimetry. And then he moved to the University of Texas at San Antonio, where he is a postdoc now. And today he will be presenting some exciting Canary-CAM results.
Yeah. Thank you, Cristina. So, and thank you to everyone to come here. It was a pleasure to give my first talk in my town and here in the Instituto de Astrofísica. And today I'm going to present some results on AGN using Canary-CAM with the polarimetry mode. So the overview of the talk is I'm going to introduce a little bit what is the polarimetry mode of Canary-CAM. Oh, okay. What happened here? I'm sorry. It was working good. Okay. Okay. Well, so I'm going to present the polarimetry mode of Canary-CAM, and later a little bit about the mechanism of polarization, just to be familiar with what kind of polarization are we expecting in AGN, what is AGN, and how can we use polarimetry to study AGN, and then later the results of Canary-CAM polarimetry. So first, Canary-CAM, the polarimetry mode of Canary-CAM is the first dual beam polarimetry. They do imaging and spectropolarimetry. It's fully commissioned, and the pixel scale is around 0.08, around 0.08 arc-second per pixel. You can use a different polarimetry mask with a field of view of 2 arc-second wide with 19 arc-second long. We have like a total of 4 different polarimetry slots that can be used. Normally the polarimetry beam is, the sketch of the polarimetry beam is you have the incident radiation, you have the dual beam, and the dual beam polarimetry split the light in 2 orthogonal components, one to each other. So then you have the imaging, a spectroscopy system, and then we have the detector. So if we go in deep on the dual beam polarimeter, this is separated on the half-wave plate that you can rotate the half-wave plate in several position angles. Normally, for the standard polarimetry mode, we use 4 different position angles: 0, 45, 22.5, and 67.5. And then we have the Wollaston, which is the key component of the dual beam polarimeter. This is the 2 prism that split the light into different components, and we have the ordinary and extraordinary ray. So then at the detector we will have like the same image twice for each one of the position angle. So then if you want to use, for example, so some data reduction, you can use the suggested software. It's a PolPack by Starlink, but also some pipelines by Dan Lee in UF, in University of Florida, Chris Bright in Australia, or me also in UTSA. You can use it. So some of the characteristics for the Canary-CAM polarimetry, the efficiency is very high at 10 microns. So the half-wave plate is chromatic, but it's being well determined. So here I have the polarization efficiency versus the wavelength between 7.5 and 13 micron. As you see, like it's expected to have the maximum efficiency at 10 microns, which is around 99.5%, and then decrease below and above the 10 micron. So that means that if you are expecting to have 100% of polarization at 10 microns, you will obtain 99.5% of polarization. So if you want to correct that, so if you want, so because we know this efficiency, if you observe in, for example, in the filter of 10.3 microns, and you are expecting to have at 100%, you get 99.5%, you do the correction, and you really obtain the final degree of polarization that is expected to be observed. The instrumental polarization is very low, and it's very well determined. So here I show the instrumental polarization versus versus time with some of the commissioning data. So this part is like we obtain very low signal to noise observations for the reason we have like these very big error bars, but if we use the median for a very high signal to noise ratio, the instrumental polarization is around 0.6 plus minus 0.2%, which is very low. The position angle of the instrumental polarization can be corrected easily by using the angle, the rotator angle of the observations, and also the elevation, basically the elevation of the object. Just in summary of the polarimetry mode, quickly. So there is a dual beam polarimeter, dual imaging, and spectropolarimetry. So the instrumental polarization is very low. The efficiency of the polarimeter can be easily corrected because it's being well characterized, and the data reduction is by experience it's been really easy to reduce the polarimetry data of Canary Cam in comparison with, for example, near infrared reduction. So it's fully commissioned and it's working very well right now. Well, it's been working well. So about the mechanism of polarization, so basically, so the polarimetry is just the measurement of the intensity and also the vector properties of the electromagnetic wave. So here what we have is like the incident radiation. I'm going to say that this is a black box right now, so mechanism of polarization, that polarize the light linearly in some specific angle. So what we're interested on is in the degree of polarization, which is the ratio between the polarized and the total intensity, and then the position angle of polarization, which is the angle of the electromagnetic wave in the sky. So let's study this black box of mechanism of polarization. One of them is scattering, which is the radiation from the illuminating source that interact with some particle and then scatter in all directions. So the sketch of this is like we have some source that, let's assume that emit some unpolarized light. This radiation interact with some particle and scatter in all directions. So then we have the observer, and the observer will always observe a degree of polarization, a linear degree of polarization with the PA, with the position angle of polarization always perpendicular to the last direction of flight of the photon. So for example, here I have protoplanetary disk in phase on. We have the source here, but it's illuminating in all sources, and we are seeing this perpendicular to the screen. And what we see is this centrosymmetric pattern with some degree of polarization depending on the properties of the dust or electrons, and then the PR polarization will be always perpendicular to the last direction of flight. Another mechanism of polarization will be synchrotron, which is produced by the relativistic particle orbiting around some magnetic field. So we have here the magnetic field line and the particle orbiting around. So if we are observing in the line of sight of the magnetic field, the degree of polarization will be perpendicular, will be circular. And then if our line of sight is perpendicular to the direction of the magnetic field, the polarization will be linear polarization and will be perpendicular to the direction of the magnetic field. So then we can calculate the geometry of the magnetic field, because the measured PR polarization will be always perpendicular, and the strength of the magnetic field in case of self absorption will be a function of the frequency, the magnetic field strength. The last mechanism of polarization I want to show is the dichroism, which is produced by the absorption or emission of the electromagnetic wave components by some dust grain. Basically, this component, so this mechanism of polarization is produced by non-spherical dust grains, which produce a differential level of absorption in the X and Y axis. So what I have here is, so this source that is illuminating just by simplicity, some unpolarized light. We have the dust grain in this elongation and perfectly aligned. What will the output radiation will be linear polarization with the position angle of polarization perpendicular to the plane of the screen. So one mechanism that can align the dust grain will be the magnetic field. So the magnetic field can be estimated depending on the PA of polarization and the degree of polarization. So one thing that we can do is build a polarized spectral energy distribution, SED, and then we will have a different wavelength dependency depending on the mechanism of polarization. What I show here is like just illustrative way, like the dust scattering with some wavelength dependency, lambda to the -4 or lambda to the -1. Then it compared with the electron scattering or synchrotron, which is wavelength independent, and dichroic absorption, which has this expression, the typical Sierkowski curve, and the dichroic emission, which is unknown but is depending on the dichroic absorption. So here we can see that a multi-wavelength study is crucial in order to identify the different mechanisms of polarization. So if we go to the optical, we have the competition between dust scattering, electron scattering, dichroic absorption, and cannot be very well determined. But if we go to longer wavelength, and that in the mid-infrared, for example, will we have dichroic emission as a dominant mechanism of polarization if dust is important, and also the electron or synchrotron emission. The other characteristic of polarimetry is the high spatial resolution. So let's assume that we have a very low spatial resolution where our resolution element is this one. So then the integrate, so if we integrate all the vectors here, because polarimetry is a vector quantity rather than a scalar quantity. So if we add all this, the net polarization will be 0%. Instead, if we have a very high spatial resolution, then we are able to resolve the planetary disk, and then the degree of polarization will be larger than 0. So high spatial resolution observations are crucial in order to obtain sensitive polarimetry measurements. Just in summary about the polarimetry, so we have several mechanisms of polarization to be observed. For example, the dust scattering or electron, synchrotron emission, and dichroic absorption or emission. So we need wide wavelength coverage and also high spatial resolution observations. Just in specific about the science, the AGN that we are interested on. So the AGN is thought to be powered by the accretion onto a supermassive black hole. So what I show here is this black dot is the black hole, and then around is the supermassive black hole, is the accretion disk. And then all these that I show here, so I don't want to go in detail, but all this is like the different types of AGN. And basically, there is a unified model of AGN that is playing all these different type of AGN as an orientation base model. Basically, is if we have a direct view of the central engine, black hole and accretion disk, we call it type 1 AGN. And if this central engine is obscured by what we call the torus distribution, it's a dust obscuring material around the central engine, we call it type 2. So then we have also some of the AGN have a very powerful jets that we call blazar in this case. So we are interested on the cornerstone of the unified model, which is the dust structure obscuring the central engine, and is being modeled quite a while during the years of investigation of AGN. So one of the models was a homogeneous torus, with it thought to be around 100 parsec in order to reproduce wide apertures in the mid and far infrared. So what we show here is the central engine, the black hole and accretion disk radiating, and then in order to explain the spectral energy distribution from wide apertures bigger than 1 arcsecond in the mid infrared and far infrared, we have to extend the torus at 100 parsec. It's also, as a first toy model, is good to, it's easy to explain it as a homogeneous torus, where the near infrared radiation comes from the directly illuminating phase of the torus, and then we have the mid infrared, the middle part, and then we have the far infrared in the outer part of the torus. So if we using high spatial resolution observation, we will be able to observe this 100 parsec torus, and we are not able to observe it. So what we so the new model that the people is thinking that is the correct one, and also physically more correct, is the clumpy torus. So rather than have a 100 parsec, it's a few parsec, and then rather than homogeneous, so the dust is distributed in clumps. So each clump is an optically thick clump, and also so this few parsec torus is consistent with the high spatial resolution in the near and in the mid infrared. So now we think that the torus is basically optically and geometrically thick, clumpy, and dusty distribution, torus, and then of a few parsec scales. So, but because it's a few parsec, we are not able to resolve it based on the 10-meter telescope. So we need to isolate the torus emission from the host galaxy and also surrounding star formation. So what we need is a high spatial resolution observation. So here what I show is IRAC images of a few different galaxies. So 10 by what? This is 10 by 10, and this is 4 by 4 arcsecond. And if we go to Gemini North, it's an 8-meter telescope with high spatial resolution, we are able to resolve the extended emission of the AGN, and we are able to isolate all the torus emission from this extended emission. So one specific case is NGC 1068. So here what I show is an optical image of the center of the AGN, and here, so if we use high spatial resolution, we can build the spectral energy distribution of the torus from 1 to 20 microns. So the dots represent the photometry, and the black lines represent the mid infrared spectroscopy. And here, so this is the modeling based on the clumpy torus model, made by Christina. Well, the clumpy torus model, the Bayes clumpy, using the clumpy torus model by Nenkova et al. And we can see that the clumpy torus model reproduces well the observations. But so here is in the total flux, but we don't have anything in the polarized SCD of the torus. So the torus is polarized, it's not. So if it's polarized, so where the polarization comes from? We think that the torus is the composition of the torus with dust. So if we get some polarization, means that the dust is aligned, and if it's aligned, so then should be some kind of a magnetic field in the torus. So one of the main focus of my research is trying to study this magnetic field in the torus, based in the intermagnetic outflow wind. What I have here is a sketch. It's from 1992. It's a sketch like drawn, but I think, to my knowledge, I mean, it's the best way to describe the intermagnetic wave. I don't know if it's another fancy one like this one, but this is explained very well this case. So what we have here is like the central black hole, and then we have this accretion disk here. So what we have here is like a high ionized plasma that lift from the accretion disk, picking up a little bit of the angular momentum of the accretion disk, and then goes away, move away from the accretion disk. Pressure with the radiation pressure, moving away from the accretion disk confined in the magnetic field and helped by the radiation pressure from the central engine. So when these clouds that are plasma are very enough far away from the accretion disk, the temperature cools down, the plasma get cold, and dust is formed. So what we have is like a continuum outflowing, moving away from this high ionized region, and what we will have is like this clumpy distribution of, well, the dust distribution of clumps surrounding the central engine with dust formed inside of the clouds. So then the question is the dusty obscuring material in AGN created by this hydromagnetic outflow wind? If yes, so then the dust grain should be aligned by this magnetic field where the clouds are confined. If this is true, so then we should detect some kind of degree of polarization that can give us information about the magnetic field geometry and the magnetic field strength. So let's go to the polarimetry and AGN and see how the polarimetry can be used to study AGN. One of the most important mechanism of polarization is scattering that can arise from the broad emission line region, which is the closest region to the central engine, with this material with high velocity dispersion producing broad emission lines that scatter the light. And also we have this narrow emission line region, which is a little bit further away from the central engine, above and below of the torus, with low velocity dispersion, producing narrow emission lines, and also scattering maybe can be arise from the torus, but this has not been detected yet. And also we have the correct emission or absorption that can arise from aligned dust grain in the torus, and also aligned dust grain around the AGN. So these structures of, so maybe in the host galaxy or in the ionization cones. And we also have synchrotron emission that can arise from the jets. So using polarimeter techniques, we can study all the structures, basically all the structures in the AGN. In case of the torus, what we will have if we go in deep is the central engine. We have this black hole accretion disk and this outflow wind very in the center, and then we will have this distribution of clumps around, and we will have some kind of magnetic field around the torus. So then if we want to study the hot dust, we will need is to study near infrared radiation, because this dust will emit between 800 to 1500 Kelvin, peaking in the near infrared. If we want to study warm dust and a little bit more far away, Canary Cam with mid infrared, Canary Cam in the mid infrared wavelength will be perfect to study that. If we want to go a little bit further and study maybe the outer edge of the torus and cold dust, we will need some ALMA polarimetry, for example. So in case of the mid infrared polarimetry, so I said so little is known about the mid infrared polarimetry in AGN, because it's basically no mid infrared polarimeters since 20 years ago, maybe, or 30 years ago, something like that. But there are a few key papers that have shown that the mid infrared polarimetry are crucial to understand the physics. The pioneering work was by Aiken et al. In 1984. The year that he was born was a paper in Nature showing mid infrared polarimetry of 1068. So here I show is the PA of polarization, the position angle of polarization, the degree of polarization, and the wavelength from optical, near infrared, and mid infrared, using imaging and spectropolarimetry, and wide apertures, a 0.5 arc-second aperture, which represent around 270 parsec in this galaxy. So the most important finding here was this shift of almost 70 degrees between the near infrared and the mid infrared. this is thought to be produced by dichroic absorption and emission. So if we have the light going through a line that's grain, so some component, so the perpendicular, so the dust grain are aligned perpendicular, the long axis of the dust grain are aligned perpendicular to the direction of the magnetic field. So what we will get is position angle of polarization perpendicular to the direction of the parallel to the direction of the magnetic field line. So if the dust grains are emitting, so then emitting the long axis, and what we will obtain is a position angle of polarization perpendicular to the direction of the magnetic field line. So what we observe, what is expected is a shift of 90 degrees in the position angle of polarization between dichroic absorption and dichroic emission, which is observed here from the near infrared and to the mid infrared. So one way to interpret this result is by dichroic emission from the torus or extended emission. Based on the wide aperture, we cannot distinguish between emission in the torus or emission in the dust from the extended emission. So later in the 90s, using a 3.9 meter telescope in the Anglo-Australian telescope AT in the N-band in the 10 micron with a 0.6 arc-second resolution and also 7 hours of observation in the telescope, they obtain one vector in the center. This vector is consistent with the observation of Aitken in the 80s, but cannot give us anything else about the structure of the AGN. So we have a 0.6 arc-second resolution, but we cannot distinguish between emission in the torus or emission in the stem or dust emission in the standard region. Later in the 2000s, Chris Packham, my advisor, used Gemini North, and this is the only mid-infrared observation using 8 meter telescope until this date. So this vector represent all these 50 or 60 vectors here. So what I show is this yellow, or this dashed line represent all these vectors here. So what we see, this vector represent like a lot of structures inside of the central region of the AGN. So what we have is like here a very high degree of polarization, almost 0% of polarization in the center, with a different PA of polarization. Though it's insane the amount of information that we can obtain using high spatial resolution observation from 10 meter telescope. The only problem here is like only was observed in one wavelength, so we don't have the wide wavelength coverage that I was talking before, so we cannot distinguish between the different mechanisms of polarization involved here in the central region of 1068. So we use Canary Cam polarimetry of AGN, and we go and observe 1068, and what we see was using different filters from, well, we did a wavelength coverage from 8.7 micron, well, in the 8.7 micron, 10.3, 11.6, and also in the PAH, which is a very narrow filter, 1 micron with 11.3 micron. And what I show here is like the 4/2 arc-second of the central region of 1068, and you see like a huge structures, a variety of structures in the central region, and also in the pH, which is it's good to know the star formation regions in AGN. And this is the polarized structures in the central 2 arc-second of 1068. It's around 120 per sec. So we don't have the full coverage of 4 arc-second because the signal to noise go down, and we want to only obtain the polarization vectors that we are that have enough signal to noise to believe it. So we cut the other extended region, and we only are able to believe the polarization between the 2 arcsecond by 2 arcsecond. But you can see here is like also a huge several structures here. So you can see. So okay, let me see. So the cross here represent the peak of the total intensity. So and here what we have is like this is the core. And then when we have like a very high polarization in the north node, which is a cloud that is being impacted by the jet. So we have the central engine, the jet of 1068 go this way and then bend. So we have this very high polarized structure. And then what we have is like the other jet going in the other direction of the plane of the sky that is extinguished by dust, basically in the galaxy. So this is the imaging polarimetry. So we did also spectropolarimetry. What I show here is the spectropolarimetry of the north node and also the south node. This peak in the south of the central engine. I show here the total flux, the degree of polarization, the PA of polarization, the position angle, and the polarized flux, which is just a multiplication of the degree of polarization and the total flux. So the blue are the imaging polarimetry from the filters, and the black is the spectropolarimetry. So I don't have in the polarization, I don't have enough. So I had to bin the data from the total flux because to improve the signal to noise in order to have independent measurements of the degree of the polarization. But also, so for example, in the south, well, let's start from the north node. The degree of polarization is almost constant, and the PF polarization results to be consistent with the previous observation with low angular resolution. So is shown that here we can confirm that the previous observation is being dominated by this structure that we call here the north node, with this cloud in the north of the central peak of 1068, where the jet impact and then bend, and then we saw this new polarized node that maybe can be distinguished SCD, distinguished jet through the dust lane. The only key here is like the center source. We don't see like a peak in the center source, so we have interpretation. Maybe the torus has a very low polarization, or the torus polarization is diluted by the highly polarized jet, as well as the extended dust emission. The extended dust emission in the direction of in the north-south direction. So the other object that we observed was Cygnus A. That was during the commissioning 2-3 years ago. I was like a week in the telescope. So it was like okay, let me see. I have a short story about with this one. So I was in Florida. Was Charlie Telesco, Carlos Alvarez, which is the support astronomer in the GTC, and Chris Packer, my advisor at that time, planning the commissioning of the imaging polarimetry. The meeting finished. 10 minutes later, Charlie Telesco, which is the chair of the University of Florida, and Chris Packer called me back to go to the office and say, "What do you do tomorrow?" So I think I'm gonna study tomorrow. I say, "No, you go to CanaryCam, to GTC tomorrow and do the imaging polarimetry commissioning of CanaryCam." So I get the flight. I fly back here. I spent 1 week. Very bad weather all the week, and also was the beginning of the GTC. So we have some kind of trouble with the software. The last 3 hours of the week of observation, we get Cygnus A at the end, with the humidity at almost at the top of the limit for closing the observatory. So we have like very brief observation of Cygnus A, but enough to obtain something to publish. So just in specific, So Cygnus A is a radio loud AGN. So it's a type 2 AGN with a heavy extinction produced by the dust lane. So just a little bit of history. So the V band was observed with a KEK2 in imaging polarimetry, and we can observe this centrosymmetric pattern here, which is characteristic of scattering from the ionization cones. So if we go to K band with HST, 2 hours of observation, we get also the ionization cones here with the scattering very highly polarized, and we have this central point source core with a different PA of polarization than the central engine, with the ionization cones. Tajante et al. Suggests that the central source is dominated by scattering. And then we have N band by James Radomski in imaging with the Gemini, I think that was. But it's no polarimetry at all, but also it's like show a point source with some kind of extended emission, extended emission in the direction of the ionization cones. We want to know what is going on in the mid-infrared, and we went to the literature, and Pribon et al. Did a polarized total flux spectral energy distribution, and show that the mid-infrared in this area using very wide aperture, 20 arcseconds. So we have to say here that these 20 arcseconds are very contaminated by extended emission, and Cygnus A has a lot of has a very strong dust lane, but still they suggest that the mid-infrared is a contribution of thermal emission from the torus, also a synchrotron emission because Cygnus A has a very powerful jet, and also extended emission from dust lane and Starbucks. So what we did was mid-infrared polarimetry, and we obtained one polarization vector, but with enough signal to noise to believe. Actually, we don't obtain more because this extended emission here are very faint in comparison with the central engine, where we need a few hours of observation in order to have all this extended emission and really see the scattering there. So, but it was surprising observation because we obtained very highly polarized intensity in the very high polarized in the mid-infrared, around 11% and 8.7 microns, and 12% in the 11.6 micron. So I say that this is the first AGN polarimetry observation with Canary Cam during the commissioning. So we were checking this 11 or 12% because when we do the polarimetry reduction, we have to align the data, and something that misaligned produce a very highly polarized fake polarization. So we need to check a little bit the images, but still we obtain 11 and 12% in comparison with another polarized and unpolarized standard. And the polarization was measured in the full potential maximum of the object, around 400 parsec. And what we trying to do is build the polarized spectral energy distribution of Cygnus A. We only have 2 data points in the mid-infrared, so we went to the K band using HST that has a similar spatial resolution than Gemini, and we built the total ACD. This is the total flux from 2 microns to 12 microns. This is the degree of polarization from 2 microns to 12, and this is the polarized flux, which is just the multiplication of these two. So the blue dots are the measurements, and then we construct a model using black body function, the synchrotron emission produced by the parsec scale jet, and also emission from the AGN, which is extinguished by this strong dust lane in front of the core. And also we add the bulge, which is very important in the K band. In the polarization, we only assume 2 different mechanisms of polarization. One is the scattering, which was suggested by Tan Hunter at K, and then we use a synchrotron emission in order to explain the rising in the polarized flux in the mid-infrared. And that was consistent with having a highly polarized core where the synchrotron radiation is arising from the parsec scale jet observed in the radio emission. So then we asked how unique this model is. So we compare with dichroic absorption. We know that we have this huge dust lane in front of the AGN. So in order to obtain 11% of polarization in the mid-infrared, we need to have all the dust grains perfectly aligned in our line sight in order to obtain this high percent of polarization in the mid-infrared. So like we have like 100%, just some column of dust in our line sight. So we need to have like 100% of the dust grain aligned in order to have it. So this is kind of not physically correct. So then also we were studying the idea of scattering, but the geometry didn't really help, because what we need is a glazing angle of the torus. What we have is the torus in some kind of inclination. The radiation from the central engine go to the inner wall of the torus, and then we have back scattering from the inner wall of the torus. But if that happens, we also have this dust grain, so the dust lane column, the column dust in front of us will extinguish the scattering radiation from the torus. And also it doesn't really explain the rising of polarized flux in the mid-infrared. So we suggest that the jet is highly polarized, and also the degree of the magnetic field geometry is parallel to the direction of the jet, which is expected. So just to finish, so the summary is like the Canary Camp, what is fully commissioned, is currently going, so giving very exciting results, but not only in AGN. It's also a paper published with from people here in the IAC, from Tariq, Shabal and Rushel in 2013, using cataclysmic variables. So, well, they have a low instrumental polarization, and we can do imaging and spectropolarimetry in the from 7.5 to 13 micron. The science cases, well, in these two cases, we have 1068 with a very complex central region, and Cygnus A with a highly polarized mid-infrared core produced by the parsec scale jet. So what we can learn, what can be learned from mid-infrared polarimetry? So the magnetic configuration of jets and or torus, that can give us idea of evolution, structure, and kinematics of the AGN, as well as, because we have the possibility of spectropolarimetry, we can test different composition and size of dust grains and see what is the dust composition of the torus and or extended emission. So polarimetry, well, yeah, it's already open, and we have a new window to research here. So the last thing I want to show is we are doing a new art science exchange project using the images of Canary Camp. What we want to do is, in collaboration with Leah, which is a photography professor in the University of Louisiana. So we are trying to explain the scales of AGN with comparison with regular objects that the people is not used to know. So like AGN is 100 parsec or 200 parsec big, 100 kiloparsec. They don't know the scales, or if you set it in miles in US or in kilometers here, it's so big that they cannot really understand it. So we want to use common objects, which, for example, the plane, the architecture of a house, or the contours of a mountain, or different objects, and try to compare which, try to give to familiarize the scales of AGN into common objects to make easier the people to understand the scales in the universe. So the idea is to make this construction of the central, well, the images of Canary Camp, for example, 1068, and we are planning to exhibit later when the paper will be published in the Art Science Museum in Austin, in Texas. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for questions.
The images of the narrowband filters of NGC 1068 are not continuous extracted.
What? Which images? The
narrowband filter. Well, I'm particularly interested on the pH.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, is there any pH emission or?
Yes, we have pH emission. I can show you. I think I have it wrong here. So if we subtract it by the continuum, what we have here is like the pH subtracted the continuum.
Okay.
And you can see, this is mine or yours? I'm sorry. So you can see there the pH emission through the tongue, which is through the tongue and different structures here. And this is the total flux. And in the polarized flux also you see this pH emission through some part of the core and also in the walls of the north node there. So yeah, we detect.
And the vector polarization is the same?
The vector polarization is the same in the north, but in the core, in the south node, it changed a little bit. But we are studying that right now, so we don't really understand exactly how that happens. So we have a meeting in 2 days in Madrid in order to discuss that results.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very nice talk. So I was wondering, because I'm sure that for Cygnus A there are already some VLBI data in radio as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering if you have compared this data with your synchrotron model, how they are compared, I mean, how they fit, how they match each other. So have you done this?
Would you say in total flux or in polarized? Because I'm not
Both of
familiar
them.
with polarized flux in VLBI. I think it's like, I don't know, it was published. I think it's not published.
Okay, so you
data.
have looked into that
Yeah.
already. Okay.
Yeah, but I checked the VLBI in total flux,
Mhm.
and the jet is perpendicular to the direction of the position angle of polarization that we obtain in the mid-infrared, but it's no polarization. It will be some polarization, will be perfect, because we can compare the mid-infrared, the VLBI, the radio emission, with the mid-infrared polarization too,
Mhm.
but it's no published data at all. I think that one of our collaborators, Eric Perman in Florida, give me unpublished paper on Cygnus A with VLBI, but I couldn't say anything about it, and it's not published neither. So I don't know exactly how to interpret that data.
Okay.
Yeah.
More questions? No? Okay, so let's thank Enrique again.
Thank you.